Welcome to another edition of Mixed Combat Radio. It is Matt Hunter here today to break down UFC on Fox 23, Shevchenko versus Pena. It's an interesting card to say the least, and it's one of those cards where I think that the result of just the overall card is going to be exciting. I think the top 4 or 5 fights are something worth sitting down and watching. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to DVR this one and watch it probably either after the boxing, because we have tons of boxing on Saturday. Carl Frampton versus Leo Santa Cruz 2, and Francisco Vargas versus Miguel Berchelt. But obviously, I broke that down on the Boxing Voice yesterday, so check that out on YouTube and Patreon, SoundCloud, iTunes. What else are we on? Stitcher, Blog Talk for that. Anyways, back to the discussion of MMA. UFC on Fox 23, Shevchenko versus Pena. I think the main event, obviously, is something that we're going to break down in whole, because it is a very interesting main event just from a style standpoint. And it's one of those that I'm really curious about how it's going to play out, because we have Valentina Shevchenko, who is a decorated Muay Thai striker. She has unbelievable kicks, unbelievable timing, counters. Her ability to set traps is pretty good. She's a southpaw. All things, and she can adapt on the fly. Like, I've seen her throw a leg kick, her opponent counter, then she turns her opponent's counter into like a spinning back fist. Stuff like that. That's creative to me. And obviously, she's super athletic. And so is Julianna Pena. I mean, Julianna Pena is just a beast, man. Like, her ability to really set the pace, because her cardio is top notch, in my opinion, from what we've seen. Obviously we haven't seen her in a 5-round fight, but from what I've seen, her ability just to stay on top and just to continually move and throw shots it's pretty impressive given her relative experience level. Because she's only 8-2, I believe. I have the records pulled up. Let me go to that. Yeah, she's 8-2. Man, she's beat a ton of people. Kat Zingano, Jessica Ai, Sarah Moros, Shayna Baszler. Those are quality names. And obviously she is young in her career. She won tough. She's been sort of deemed as like the next big prospect, but I think Shevchenko is probably going to win this one, take it, and I think rather handedly, I guess. I think Shevchenko is just the better all striker. She's better at judging distance and establishing that distance and being able to make sure that her opponent sticks to that distance from her that she wants at all times. She did that with Holly Holm. I think Holly Holm is a master of distance and range, and Shevchenko outdid her in that. I still think that if Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes was a 5-round fight, that Shevchenko probably would have won that bout rather easily too, because I think Amanda Nunes has cardio issues, and I don't think Shevchenko has those issues. Again, I think that Julianna Pena is definitely she's gonna take her down a couple times, probably in the first 2 or 3 rounds, make it really a grueling affair, and then I think that she's gonna tire out. I suspect that. I think that just the overall work rate of striking to the body, to the head, to the legs by Shevchenko is just going to wear her down after those 3 rounds. The next 2 rounds, the championship rounds, Shevchenko is definitely gonna do some work. I think she might get a late round stoppage. I'm gonna go with the decision though, because again, I don't think that Julianna Pena is anything to scoff at in terms of her skills, anything like that. I know like her striking is pretty basic and slow at times, but on the ground she's an absolute beast. But again, I'm going to go Shevchenko. I mean, who has she lost to? She's lost to Amanda Nunes and Liz Carmouche in the last 7 years. In the last 7 years, she's lost to Amanda Nunes, which was last year, which was very close. And she lost to Liz Carmouche 7 years ago. So, man, that's just insane. Like, I think she's one of the most underrated fighters in all of MMA. In all honesty, in terms of what the casuals know, they don't know who Shevchenko is. You know, they don't know who Pena is. But oh well. It's one of those things where hopefully after this fight they get some more brand recognition. The co-main event is one of those fights that I think every MMA fan and just combat sports fans salivates over. I was going to have Boxing MD on, but he couldn't make it. I know he really wanted to talk about this fight, but Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. It's become sort of a rivalry in a sense, because, Masvidal, called Cerrone out really aggressively on social media and really got this fight based off of that. He made Cerrone stick to his sort of ethos, of fight anyone, anywhere, anytime, and he did it. It's in his hometown of Denver, Colorado. Another thing I have not brought up because I just forgot. Because of Denver, Colorado, cardio is going to play just an issue with everyone, possibly because of the altitude. Just something we have to be aware of. And this fight is really interesting from a style standpoint, because I think on the ground they mostly negate each other and they're pretty equal on that point. Neither of them are great wrestlers. I think Cerrone has a better reaction double leg, but I think Masvidal is just as slick on the ground in terms of submissions and grappling once they actually get to the ground. So Cerrone might have this slight edge in just takedowns, but it's very slight. And so I think this fight mainly it might be attested on the ground at points, but that's not where the majority of the fight's going to be contested. It's going to be contested on the feet. And Cerrone used to be a really traditional, almost like Muay Thai kickboxer. He stood up very straight. He threw lots of kicks, standing elbows. Maybe had like a jab here and there, but his boxing wasn't really there ever until very recently with Brandon Gibson. Because Brandon Gibson's actually one of the best striking coaches and boxing coaches in MMA. And so his boxing and his ability to stay within boxing range, within that tight range, and throw combinations without really being worried, because at times that's what it looked like in the past. But I think his bread and butter is still obviously his kicks. I think his body kicks and his switch kicks up top, and even his leg kicks are just beautiful. Like if you're a young person out there that's been training and you want to study a person that knows how to kick, Donald Cerrone is one of the best kickers in MMA, up there with Edson Barboza, Jose Aldo. Who else? Who are some other good ones? Thiago Alves was. That's really about it in terms of like great leg kickers. There aren't a ton anymore. Not that off the top of my head. But anyways, I digress. But Donald Cerrone, man, like he hasn't. You look at his resume. He beat Matt Brown, beat Rick Story, beat Patrick Cote, beat Alex Oliveira, lost to Raphael dos Anjos, beat John McDessie, beat Benson Henderson, beat Miles Jury, beat Eddie Alvarez, beat Jim Miller, and beat Edson Barboza, beat Adrian Martins, beat Evan Dunham, lost to Raphael dos Anjos, beat KJ Nunes, lost to Anthony Pettis, beat Melvin Gillard, beat Jeremy Stevens, lost to Nate Diaz, beat Dennis Seaver. Like his resume is just, it's fantastic. Honestly, it's a Hall of Fame resume. Like obviously he has never really gone over that hump. He is a modern day Kenny Florian, for example, modern day. Obviously Michael Bisping doesn't fit anymore because he has a belt, but like back in the day, Michael Bisping. But anyways. It's weird because like Masvidal, he doesn't have the same, I think, resume in terms of just strength. But you look at like his overall resume, he beat Jake Ellenberger, beat Ross Pearson, lost close split decisions to Lawrence Larkin. Bench Henderson beat Cesar Ferreira. Lost a super close split decision to Al Quinta. Very controversial. A lot thought it was a robbery. Beat James Grouse. Excuse me. Beat Darren Cruikshank. Beat Pat Healy. Lost to Husam Kabalov. Excuse me. Beat Michael Chiesa. Beat Tim Means. Beat Justin Wilcox. Lost to Gilbert Melendez. Beat KJ Noons. Lost to Paul Daly, before that, a few fights before that, lost to Luis Palamo. But if you look at all those losses, all decisions. Like Masvidal is one of the toughest guys the sport's ever seen. He's had one of the toughest chins the sport has ever seen. Yes, he's lost quite often. He actually has 11 losses, but only one of those is due to TKO, and that's from a long, long time ago. 2 of them by submission. 8 by decision. So I think that this fight is probably going to go to decision. I think that Jorge Masvidal's superior boxing is going to play a really interesting aspect into the fight, because I think if Don Cerrone stays in the pocket for too long, for too many periods of time, throughout too many rounds, Masvidal may work up enough offense and volume to win. Because I think he's the better combination boxer. I think he's more comfortable in the pocket. I think his chin is at this point actually probably a little more durable. That's really weird to say, because Don Cerrone got knocked down by Matt Brown, and that's not discrediting Matt Brown, but that was an overhand right. Imagine if Jorge Masvidal lands that right, and I think Don Cerrone is susceptible to that right. But again, Don Cerrone, I can see him just kicking him a lot, because Jorge Masvidal, and this has been talked about a lot amongst pundits, is that Jorge Masvidal is one of those guys that was a boy fighting men at a very young age. And I know like Conor Reavers and Patrick Wyman talk about that on Heavy Hands podcast a lot. And the fact that these type of guys that fought really good competition from a very early onset and just overall just grew up in fighting, they become almost survivalist, because in their minds, nothing that their opponent is doing is actually hurting them. So they feel like they're winning in a way. It's a weird way to think about it, but I think that's a lot of fighters sort of have that mindset, and you see that in boxing too, or kickboxing, and any other combat sport. But Masvidal is one of those guys, and Cerrone, for a long period of time, I thought was that sort of guy too. But recently, he's really turned it up, and obviously, he's always been a bad first-round fighter. But I would say the same about Jorge Masvidal. I do not think Jorge Masvidal is the greatest first-round fighter. I think both of them take that first round off a lot. So I can see a 29-28 scorecard almost either way. I know Masvidal is the underdog, but he's the type of guy that would knock Don Cerrone off his momentum right now. Because from what we've seen, and obviously, not to say that history always repeats itself, but we have a trend here that Don Cerrone wins a bunch of fights, gets a bunch of hype, boom, he suffers a loss. Gets a bunch of wins, gets a bunch of hype, boom, suffers a loss. Could this be that loss? I'm going to pick Cerrone. I'm going to pick it by decision, but it's a close one. It is a very, very close fight. So if you pick Masvidal, I'm not going to look at you like you're crazy. It's entirely within the realm of possibility. The next fight on the card is, what is it? Andrei Arlovski versus Francis Ngannou. Sorry if I'm butchering that name. But Ngannou is one of the most athletic and explosive strikers I've seen in a long time at the heavyweight division. It's crazy because he seems like he's a complete natural, because his IQ looks like it's there. His grappling already seen. He submitted Anthony Hamilton. That's not saying like it's a huge accomplishment submitting Anthony Hamilton, but I just wasn't expecting it. Knocking out Curtis Blades was a real prospect. Knocked him out. I think that's going to be interesting to see what he's going to do against a huge step up in competition with Andrei Arlovski. And I think that when we get a fight like this,
shit happens, man.
just like Andrew Garcia, man, he says shit happens. Like Andrei Arlovski is still an explosive striker himself, still one of the most powerful hitters in the game, still one of the better strikers at heavyweight. But again, his chin is not there. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, all by finishes. I'm gonna go in Ngannou, and I think he is gonna knock out Andrei Arlovski in the first round. We're about to see finally some young blood in the heavyweight division. Bet the house on it. Trust me. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I saw that Money Monsters movie with George Clooney. I know what happened. So don't believe me. Trust me. Anyways, Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy, as they call him. Back when he was on Tough, George St. Pierre and Josh Koscheck, man, that was a long time ago. Oh my God. That seems like decades ago. It's only like 5 or 6 years ago. Wow. Shit, time flies. Anyways, Bruce Leroy. One of the most interesting guys in MMA from just a interview perspective, a philosophical perspective. Just really he embodied the idea of a free spirit, and especially with the idea of martial arts, that fusion. And we get that a lot. Evan Tanner, for example, similar in that way. Obviously a little bit different, but similar. That hyper spiritual. Thinking about the metaphysics of fighting in life, and there's different people all together. And then got a guy like Jason Knight, and Jason Knight, I think has great top control, good striking, but I think he's never really faced a guy like this. He has a loss to Kawajiri, and Kawajiri I think is one of the best grapplers in the lighter weight divisions, especially out of Japan, in my opinion. Other than guys like Chanel Inoki or anything, Aoki or anything like that. But I'm gonna pick Caceres. It's gonna be close. It's gonna be really close, and I think I can see another like 29-28 decision. But I think we're gonna see a lot of exciting scrambles, a lot of exciting striking technique from both guys. This is gonna be a really intriguing fight, just from how the styles are gonna mesh. But again, I'm gonna pick Bruce Leroy Caceres. The next fight on the card, smiling Sam Alvey versus Nate the Great Marquardt. And Marquardt, it's funny because at a time, I remember when there was serious pundits in MMA saying, back when Marquardt was going to fight Anderson Silva, saying that the UFC would want Nate Marquardt to win because he's easier to market. It's just interesting, how his career has progressed, and Sam Alvey, a guy that was on the regional scene for a long time with Bellator, just one of those guys that will go in there, put on an exciting show, maybe knock out somebody, or get finished in brutal fashion. And then you have Nate Marquardt, who's really sort of been the same way, almost trading wins and losses for a while now. His last, he beat Seaweed Holloway. That was legit. Tamden McCrory, that was his last win. I don't give it that too much. James DeHuna, we now know what James DeHuna was. He was touted as this big prospect, but now we've seen what he really was, and we can argue about the merit of it because I think that James DeHuna is a prime example of one of those prospects that was really fed to the Lions before he was even close to being ready, and I think the UFC did him a disservice. That's my personal opinion about it. But then he has losses to Hector Lombard, Jake Ellenberger, Tarek Safany, Brad Tavares, Kelvin Gastelum, Thiago Santos. He beat Tyron Woodley way back, man. That was, what was that? That was 5 years ago. Holy shit. Look where Woodley is now. Imagine Woodley against Marquardt nowadays. That would be brutal. That would be just devastating. Oh my God. This fight's weird because I can see either guy getting knocked down in the first round. It's almost a coin flip for me, but I'm gonna go Marquardt because I think he has the better technique overall. I think Sam Alvey is just, his striking's so bad, man. Oh God, he is the prime example of a journeyman that just has made it, that just has continued to stay in the upper tier of the sport due to some reason. I do not know why, but for some reason he's here, and I think he's going to get knocked out. But if he went out there and landed one clean shot on Marquardt sometime in the first round and put him out cold, I'm not shocked at all. Like the great Angel says.
Shit happens, man.
Shit happens. But let's go to the next fight on the card. Again, my pick is Marquardt, in case anyone was confused about that. This fight, the next fight on the card, Raphael Assuncao versus Aljamain Sterling. To me, it's one of those fights where I just don't get on a matchmaking standpoint. Both guys had losses at the top level. Aljamain Sterling against Brian Carey, and Raphael Assuncao against TJ Dillashaw. And obviously TJ Dillashaw may be the best bantamweight in the world. Brian Carey probably not, but he deserves respect. He deserves respect. And then you have this fight, both coming off huge losses. Not in the fact that they're like finished at the end, but they were big losses. If either of them had won those bouts, theoretically they could be vying for the title. Like, think about it. If Aljamain Sterling went there and submitted Brian Carey in the first round like he almost did, and he called out Dominic Cruz, would we have seen Dominic Cruz versus Aljamain Sterling over Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt? Obviously that's, alternative history, but that's, I think, a valid point. And I'm not going to say the same with Raphael Assuncao, because for some reason I don't think the UFC loves Raphael Assuncao. I don't think they love Aljamain Sterling either, just because of him going to free agency and testing them in that way. Obviously, the UFC wanted some sort of backlash against that. And I think this is sort of it in some way. But on this technical standpoint, Raphael Assuncao is the better striker. His boxing is better. He's a cleaner striker. He's more fluid. Aljamain Sterling mainly uses his striking, and when I say striking, it's only long-distance kicks. Leg kicks, teeps, maybe a switch kick, maybe up top, to keep distance until he can shoot. His boxing is not there, but he has said that that is a big issue, that he needs to work on it. I don't know if he's going to get the best training at Sierra Longo. I know that's kind of like sacrilegious at sometimes because of Ray Longo and what people think of his striking, coaching credentials. But I digress. I think that, and then on the ground, I think it's very close as well. I think Raphael Assuncao is a gifted grappler, and I think that Aljamain Sterling is just probably a little bit more gifted. I think he's obviously the bigger guy. He's the stronger guy. I think cardio is an issue, though, just from what we've seen. It's a really hard fight to pick. And I've heard really smart people, go, slight bet, slight pick on Aljamain Sterling, hopefully he improves his boxing. But we're going basically off of the potential of Aljamain Sterling. Do we believe that he has improved his striking enough to have a better all-around MMA game to beat high-level guys like a Raphael Assuncao, who has a well-developed all-around game? And I think the question is an unanswerable one until we see the fight. And that makes picking the fight that much harder. And it's funny because I'm saying all this, and I'm still going to pick Aljamain Sterling. And I know that might be crazy. But I remember seeing Aljamain Sterling come up, and I thought, this guy, when he puts it together, will be something truly special. And I still believe that. And I saw it in Woodley. I saw it in Cody Garbrandt. I saw it in Conor McGregor. I saw it in all these guys. Tony Ferguson, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Stephen Thompson. You saw all these young guys with greatness. TJ Dillashaw. When he put on that upset performance, and it wasn't even the upset performance. Like when he fought Mike Easton, he looked really good in that bout too. We've seen the next generation of great fighters. They're before us right now. We're watching it right now. That's the craziest part. Is Aljamain Sterling one of them? I don't know, but I think he is. And unfortunately, this is one of those fights or matchups where I think that a tune-up for both men is, one, deserved, and two, the better promotional matchmaking thing to do. Because think about it. Aljamain Sterling is still a hot prospect. He still has that star potential and that it factor. And now you're putting it up against a fighter that, in my opinion, is a harder opponent than the one he just lost to. It's just, I don't get it. I truly don't get it. That's why I think it's so much of a backlash from the UFC, from Aljamain Sterling testing free agency. What else is this? Because if he's the darling, they give him a soft touch. But they didn't do that. So it's weird. It's gonna be really interesting to see that fight, to see the outcome. Depending on who loses, where do they go from there? I think that's gonna be really intriguing for both men, because I think both men are treated as the black sheep by the UFC. That's just from my perception of what I've seen and how these guys have been matched. The UFC does not think, or does not think, because it's weird. Because I've heard this argument, I think it was from Luke Thomas, that when the UFC truly believes in you, they throw you in the deep end. I've heard that thought process, and I don't necessarily think that that's wrong. I just think that on this particular case, both guys have been matched so difficult, and it makes no sense to me. It really does. And I know that for the UFC, once you get to that level, for some reason, there's just no easy fights. And that's weird. It really is. Alexander Gustafsson versus Jan Blachowicz fight is the rarity, the anomaly. Those do not happen normally. Instead, we get Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero, and now Chris Weidman versus Gegard Mousasi. None of those are tune-ups. But unfortunately, this is just the way it is. And I don't know if the fighters are to blame. I don't know if the promoters are to blame. Because I think maybe there's blame on both sides. Maybe that's the better argument. Maybe that's a more nuanced argument. And I tend to think that whenever an opinion or an hypothesis about a situation has more nuance to it, it probably has more validity to it. That's what I think. But anyways, I digress. It's going to be an interesting fight card. And I cannot obviously wait to watch it. I'm not going to be live tweeting about it, unfortunately, because I'm going to be watching Carl Frampton versus Leo Santa Cruz 2, Dejan Zlatican versus Mikey Garcia, and Francisco Vargas versus Miguel Burchelt, plus Lee Selby versus Jonathan Barros, Takeshi Mora versus Miguel Roman. Tons of great boxing, tons of great MMA this weekend. Plus, we have Bellator tonight. Melvin Gillard versus Anthony Anichikawani. And I'm probably not going to watch that live. That's from movie DVR too. Maybe not. I have nothing else to do. I might put it on live. It's Melvin Gillard. You always know that you're going to get something exciting. But it's been an exciting episode here from Mixed Combat Radio. I will get back to you guys either late Saturday night, probably recording late Saturday night and releasing Sunday morning, or Sunday. I'm gonna do the review show of UFC, and I'll do some maybe review of the boxing as well, just because me, I can't help it. Me, I love mixed martial arts. I love combat sports. I love boxing. I can't help but talk about it. I'm an addict. But again, it's been great. You can follow me at Mixed Combat News on Twitter. Again, support us at Patreon, at Mixed Combat Radio, patreon.com /Mixed Combat Radio, SoundCloud, Mixed Combat Radio, iTunes, Mixed Combat Radio, YouTube, Mixed Combat Radio. Again, all platforms, basically, Mixed Combat Radio. I will see you next time. It's been great. Peace.